Strike a Chord, music chit-chat with your host, Valentino Kikowski. Welcome to Strike a Chord, and today we have Simon Pearlman, a singer-songwriter, multi-instrumentalist, guitarist, drummer. Welcome, Simon.
Thank you very much. Good to be here.
The pleasure's all ours. Brisbane kid.
Yeah, it's a little bit confusing, the chronology, because I was technically born in Sydney.
Okay.
I suppose it's that whole, what was it, John Lennon said he was born in Liverpool but grew up in Hamburg. So I was born in Sydney but grew up in Brisbane. Yeah.
Why the transition to Melbourne?
Well, Brisbane was great for the time when I was living there. I played drums in a few bands and cut my teeth on the live scene there. But Melbourne's, I guess, live music scene was just too good to resist, and the community here was such a magnetic.
Completely understand that.
Yeah, so I moved here in 2008.
That's not too long ago, actually.
No, it's quite recent, and all things considered. And the first A Man Called Sun release had only just come out, so it was around that sort of time when I was transitioning to a solo, for want of a better term, solo career.
So in Brisbane, I had a bit of a read, and you call it the tropical DIY. Is that right?
Yeah, I think there's something about the scene there, or at least at the time, we're talking about the mid-2000s kids, where it was very much organic, and there were a lot of venues, particularly around the Fortitude Valley area, which, inner city Brisbane, very sort of supportive art scene, lots of, I guess, places popping up that might normally not be a venue, and the next week it might be gone, but it gave you a chance to get out and
try some things.
And try some things, And that was certainly the case with the bands I played in, and then later with my own solo work. So, it just encourages, I think, or it fosters that kind of independent spirit. Yeah.
Did you play drums predominantly in Brisbane, or did you play everything, or was it here that you thought, all right, I'm going to give everything a crack?
Yeah, it was the first few years I was drumming in a band called Genshen, which, we did quite well for ourselves. We sort of had the Triple J backing and did a few TV appearances and toured around Australia, and that was great.
That would have been a good experience.
Oh, it was amazing, but I sort of felt there were always kind of songs bubbling away in the background, and we sort of did synth rock, which was a little bit different to what I was doing, and so I formed another band just on my own with a few mates, and sort of had a go at fronting it and just playing my own songs, and that was the first step, and then that was for a few years in Brisbane, and then that kind of band ran its course, and decided to pursue the solo thing. I started recording things at home, and it just seemed like a logical progression.
As everyone does, everyone starts at home and then you progress.
Yeah.
But you progressed in a way where let's just get a studio and do it at home, right?
Yeah.
Well, let's just buy some stuff.
Yeah, and there were a lot of missteps early on. I didn't really know what I was doing.
We were all in that stage once upon a time.
Yeah, I think everyone goes through that. And so the first EP, actually the first couple of EPs were, I guess just shots in the dark, little bit of experiments, and trying to hone my craft.
And that was with
A Man Called Sun.
A Man Called Sun.
Yeah.
Did you find that you started before you put the group together, or did you sort of put the group together and then start that project?
Yeah, it was very much a one-man show for years, and it wasn't until I'd have the odd kind of, temporary lineup that we'd play gigs every now and then. But
whenever you needed someone, you pluck them from here.
I would get just from the sort of network. But when I moved to Melbourne, I guess I started seriously, trying to get a band together. So we've obviously gone through a few lineups, but it was really just an excuse to get out and play live, because I love playing with other musicians, and that's what it's about.
We all do.
Yeah.
And the thing about playing with live musicians, everyone's different as they are as a human being, but everyone's even more different when they play, and when it's live, magic happens.
Yeah, it's the chemistry, and I was trying to capture that early on with the original lineups, but it's always an ever evolving thing, and thankfully I'm lucky to have a really good lineup at the moment, and my guitarist, he's been with the lineup since 2017, the Current and Man Called Sun lineup. So, it's good that I just I just hope that I can hold on to them for a bit longer.
Look, we all like to be in a long relationship with our musicians and our bands. We don't know what's going to happen, though. We don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. But
it's
enjoy it
bromance.
while you can. Yeah, it's a bromance. Enjoy it while you can. Your single Plateau, I had a listen. It's a great song, great track.
Thank you.
Really well produced, well written, and as I was saying before, it's got that Paul Kelly-ish sort of sound. And you produce that end to end.
Yeah, so basically, most of the songs I write, I'll sort of demo it. I'll demo it pretty roughly with all the parts.
Yep.
And when I show it to the other band members, they pick it up and add their own slant. Yep. But with that song, it was pretty minimal involvement from the others. That there is bass playing from the other constant member of the group. He's playing bass on it, Thomas Madden. And Sam, the member who I mentioned before, he's been there since 2017. He added some lead guitar, and there was a little bit of backing vocals from others. But yeah, it was essentially all the other parts, just kind of workshopping it away on my own.
Yep.
The keyboards, all the layers, and all the bits and pieces that go into it. So yeah, end to end, it's essentially a somewhat singular vision. Yeah.
I find that a big achievement when you do it end to end, and then when you sort of like listen to it. I know I've done it with my tracks a lot of time, and then you think something can happen, but I don't know what.
Yeah.
Then when you give it to someone else, you get the bass player come in, or you get the drummer, or you get the keyboard player in, and they put a bit of this, put a bit of that, and then you think, okay, now it's opening up. And I find that true with a lot of because I do a lot of solo sort of stuff as well. Because playing nylon string guitar for me, and putting in a lot of different instruments can sometimes overcrowd it, so to speak. And it depends on what you're playing and what your sound is. But that single Plateau actually works with everything in it. So
Thank you.
It's great.
Yeah, well, I think one thing I'm always conscious of, I should say, is trying not to overstuff the song with too much unnecessary instrumentation. So with that one, there's a lot of bits and pieces which I would take out, I might remove, or in the mix down might be ditched. So I generally veer towards something lush sounding, but not to the point where it's overcomplicated, because everything has its place.
That's very important. And it's good that you have that awareness, because sometimes, and if you don't mix down the things yourself, you give it to someone, they don't know your concept, so you need to sit with them and do all of that. And sometimes that can work with you or against you sometimes. But in regards to that, it's a really, really well done mix. It's it's all there. It's everything's there.
Thank you. Well, I should point out, as tempted as I am to claim full credit, I did have a very talented mixer in the US do a bit of work on it. His name's Jordan Silver. So I worked closely with him, as close as you can work with someone online. And he gave that song and what we had a really nice polish. And then it was mastered in the UK, which sort of glued it all together, I suppose. But
yeah, mixing and mastering, two separate things.
Oh my God, yes. Yeah.
And the mastering is like the icing on the cake, So, but going back to, I suppose, the arranging and your musicality and your approach. What's your approach when you have an idea? Is it lyrics first or music first, or whatever sort of comes first? So,
I wish it was lyrics, because then I could count dozens and dozens of interviews, that I've read of some of my favorite songwriters, and they all say the same thing. Lyrics, with some exception, lyrics is like the hardest thing to get right. And it always, unless it's the odd phrase that sticks, it's usually the last thing to be worked on.
Yeah.
So music first in my case. I'll usually just be strumming a guitar or just playing piano, and the chords
Yep.
will suggest the melody.
Yep.
I never really studied music. I never, I don't know how to read music, but so I'm, self-taught. So I think for me, it's about finding chords that are interesting or kind of
Yep.
spark, or a chord sequence that sparks my interest. With Plateau, I had an old 70s organ that was sitting on the
Okay.
street. That
Oh, really?
I used. I think you can find them if you go for a stroll. I think it's Hard Rubbish Time, and
Probably, especially here in Brunswick.
Yeah,
Actually, you probably won't find them here in Brunswick.
No,
They'll probably snap them up.
they'll go. Yeah, they'll end up in one of these vintage stores. No,
Yeah.
I'm just joking. But yeah, I found one and just started bashing away on this. It was kind of a Monkees style.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Organ riff. So and then I sort of added the drum machine. It's one of those organs that's got the drum machine on it, and so that song was written almost entirely on that old 70s organ. And then
Oh, cool.
when I moved to a unit, I don't live there anymore, but when I moved to this place in Brunswick East, I ended up having to ditch the organ because it just wouldn't fit. Fit in the.
Okay.
Like it fit, but it was just every time you try and play it, you'd be squashed up against the wall. So my advice, kids, is if you find an instrument, just make sure you can take it to where you're going to move to. Because
Make sure you got the accommodation
make sure
right.
you got the accommodation right.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. Look, things like that. That's where the magic happens. I think that doesn't happen very often. Where you got a whole backstory about this single. So that's very interesting as well. Maybe that's where the lyrics probably come from as well. Sometimes,
Yeah.
not for every song, but maybe that's where that's where the journey takes you.
Yeah, I think you're right. Some of the I guess experiences that I've had in the last few years influence or inform the lyrics. But it's a bit difficult because if I say it's a bit difficult for me to claim that they're autobiographical. There is an autobiographical element, but there's always a bit of detachment as well.
That's what makes it interesting.
Exactly. Like there's a line in that song which says, I asked my mother. My mother asked me when I'm going to have some kids. My mother doesn't ask me when I'm going to have some kids. So, I tell a lie there, folks, but it's in there. It's in there.
Yeah.
So,
anything to make it interesting, and that's there's a lot of songs where it's not really the truth. They're talking telling some porcupines, but hey,
songwriters are great big fish people.
Yeah.
The fish just gets bigger and bigger.
That's right. When you put things together, do you have in mind a band, people, instruments, or do you just, all right, this is the melody, these are the chords, let's just see what happens?
It's a bit of both. Some songs in my head, I'll be thinking, well, that lends itself to a pretty stark, simple arrangement. For example, there was a song on the last album called Sandy J, which was about, it's a pretty specific subject, but it's about, it's actually based on the Nancy Drew story, the Australia's first female pilot or flying doctor.
Okay.
I just changed the name. But that song is a good example because I didn't feel it needed much embellishment. It was just going to be me on acoustic and then maybe a bit of cello or something in there. But usually I'll have a band arrangement in my head or various kind of instruments going on in the background and go, that needs a bit of layering. So with what we had, with the riff, I felt like it needed at least two lead guitars running through it.
Yep.
It needed the riff and then it needed another second guitar, almost like that Neil Young thing where you've got these two guitars wailing away. So yeah, it's a bit of both. It really depends on the song and what it's calling for or what it's what it's suggesting.
Yeah.
But yeah, mostly an actual band backing is what I go for. And if I can't capture that with my band, not because they can't do it, but just because some songs may be better off just with a drum machine, then I'll just kind of layer it up that way on my own. Yeah. So it just depends.
So what happens live?
Live is a different beast. Live is a very different
these
beast.
things that you layer and all of this, because I'm interested because I do the same thing. And when it comes to live, it's a completely different version.
Yeah.
Do you find that as well?
Yeah, absolutely. When we play live, we tend to crank things up a bit and get a bit,
Get a bit magical.
Yeah, well, we get a bit Spinal Tap.
Oh,
We get a bit rock and roll.
10.5, 11.
Yeah,
You know.
it's a delicate. Well, with us, we are just an indie rock act, so it's probably around the 6. But
If you hit pushing the 7, that means it's
yeah,
you know,
that's a good night.
that's a good night.
That's a good night. Yeah, but we tend to we jam out the songs a bit.
Yeah.
We make it a bit more electric, and literally like we sort of plug things in a bit and make it a bit more overblown. Yeah.
And improv? Do you guys improv?
Yeah, a couple of songs. Yeah, there's a song on the new album called Fire Glow, which has a pretty big improv section.
Okay.
And then there's a few other songs in the set where, they're usually a 3-minute song on the album, but we stretch it out to 6 minutes. There's a longer solo. Or bits and pieces.
And that gives you a bit more time, and it's open to interpretation as well. Life is life, right? You can't beat it.
Well, that's right. I think they're two different sides of the coin, and I'm definitely more of a studio person. I'm more comfortable in the studio, but I think post lockdown, it's felt amazing to just get on stage with other musicians. It's just been something that is so easy to take for granted,
isn't it?
Yeah.
Isn't it? I totally agree. It's been hard for the musicians.
Absolutely.
In general, and because we're musicians as well, it's in our heart, and that's where that's where we concentrate on whether it's something's good for the musician, something's bad, and I think coming out of COVID, every musician that's been playing live all their lives is hanging to go with them and play live again. But then on the other token, you got some venues that will probably take that situation and not abuse it, but you'll go there and play for less money, or you won't do it because you're doing it on a professional level. You want to do it because you want to go out and play again. And I think I think some venues have taken that for granted, I think.
Oh yeah, and it's an interesting time because obviously topically speaking, there is a big push for musicians to have a minimum wage, and I'm all for
that's been going on for a while. I'm all for that as well.
Yeah.
And I think now it's more embellished after the COVID crap.
Yep.
But yeah, I think there should be something, and as much as we all can help individually as musicians, I think the music communities, because there's a lot of us, a lot of communities, I think should probably just get together and say, oh, well, this is it. It doesn't matter who you're going to get. This is the standard. This is what you're going to get paid.
Yes.
This is whether you get an indie rock or you get a metal band, or you get a punk rock band, or you get a Latin band, or whatever. That's the standard, right? And also the standard of who's pro and who's semi-pro and who's amateur. So I think it's a very good point that you raise. It's a very important point, especially for the livelihood of us musicians.
I think it needs to be absolutely a fairer playing field. Anything I would say, and this is just very subjective here, is
that's all right.
If you are a band starting out, it shouldn't be necessarily a minimum wage, but I would plug for a minimum rider where you got a fridge full of beer. Right? just a minimum fridge full of beer. Drinks. That would be the goal.
Or maybe a meal as well.
Maybe yeah. And if not a meal, then at least at least a decent discount on that meal. Because,
you're probably right.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, I'm no expert on how it works with the labour industry, but. I think there needs to be some incentive.
I agree. And probably, free hire of equipment or something like that thrown in for them. I don't know. Maybe that's an incentive.
There's some great venues. Actually, we've played it recently where I think some of them have kind of come up. They've sprung up since the pandemic. Yep. One of which we're playing at. And sorry, this is an accidental plug. I didn't.
No, go for it. Go for it.
We are playing in a couple of weeks at this great venue called Mama Chen's in Footscray. Okay. This is a plug for the venue, if anything else. As far as I understand, it was built during the height of the pandemic, and then it sort of opened up when things were opening up again. And they've just got some of the best equipment that if a drummer rocks up, the kit's there ready for them.
How good is that?
Yeah, and it's a really good kit.
How good is that?
Not as good as this kit.
This kit's The Rolls Royce, I think.
That's amazing. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm very attracted to it. Lovely shade of green. But no, I don't mean in that way. Sorry, kid. But this venue. I recommend it to any band that's wanting a decent gig. Mama Chen's is really good. It's in Footscray. So
And by all means plug it, because this podcast is about that. It's about, the pushing of musicians, the exposure of musicians, venues, and everything like that.
Oh,
That's what we want to do.
Well, in case there's any confusion, that's Saturday, 15th of October, and it's free. I think.
Free?
Yeah. I'm pretty sure it's free.
In regard, we were talking about you sort of touched upon your new single and everything like that, or a couple of new singles and new album coming up. How's that traveling? What can we expect?
So we've released now 2 singles from the album. It's obviously been a bit of a stagnated thing because of this whole COVID debacle. But we're hoping to release the album in November, as in early November. And it's going to be pressed on vinyl, so that's a first for us.
Okay.
The album's called Time Bombs in the Sea, which is actually it's lifted from one of the lines to what we had. So
okay.
Cool. That's now album number 4. So it's been on the cards for a little while, but we're really excited to be finally putting it out there.
Vinyl, huh?
Yeah.
Vinyl is different mastering method.
Different mastering and different costs. So
yeah, I know.
Not cheap.
Not cheap. It's a few years ago. It sort of like had its sort of like return, but yeah, it's not cheap because I'm thinking about vinyl as well for my next album, but I've been turned off it in a sense that what if you don't sell them all and you got a minimum to do and you press and then they all stack up at home?
Yeah, absolutely.
And you use them as a doorstop.
Yeah, you don't want to put it under the bed. Those vinyl copies.
No.
So that's why we're keeping our aim realistic. We're doing what's called a short run of vinyl. So
about 100.
Yeah, it's 100. I think it's 150 is the minimum we could do.
Yep.
There's literally only 2 pressing plants in Australia. The second one only just opened in Brisbane, funnily enough.
I thought there was one in Melbourne.
Yeah, that's
There
the other
is,
one.
yeah.
So the other one is just down the road in Brunswick East.
Yep.
So that's Zenith. So they're pressing it, but we actually got the vinyl mastering done by the same person that mastered it for digital release in the UK. He does vinyl mastering.
Okay.
He's really good.
Yeah,
so,
it's totally different. It's a totally different master. It's a totally different ball game.
Yeah, absolutely. There's dynamic considerations.
Yeah.
But thankfully I've got the test pressings and had a few listens and
Nice.
it's all sounding good. But it's a standard length because one thing I've noticed with vinyl now is because obviously quality is paramount for all these successful bands, and they put out 2 or 3 2 or 3 records that amount to one album. So you play it at you might play it at 45 or 33, but the point is you've got to keep flipping it over every 2 or 3 songs. Well, I didn't want to do that, so it's still one record. Just old school style, one record, A and B side.
That's it.
And also that keeps, from a practical point of view, it keeps costs down.
It does because I think, and also it depends on how many output tracks you have. If you've got stereo, that'll give you so many grooves in the vinyl. If you're going to expand on that and try and put all these phases and stuff, it actually uses more of the vinyl. That's
right.
what I heard. So, and that costs more.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So you want to do probably Chili Peppers and do a mono all the way through,
Yeah, we're an unsigned indie band, so our budget is quite limited.
Yeah. Sometimes the budget is no budget, but So Simon, your love of music, where did it derive from? Where did it come from?
Well, that's a really good question because it literally relates to what we were just discussing. My dad, bless him, used to put on a lot of records when I was a kid. Everything from the Beatles to Neil Young to Simon & Garfunkel to Kate Bush.
Oh, okay.
This is before Stranger Things.
Yes.
So this is a long time. This is
Babushka.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, Babushka.
Babushka.
Yeah, this was literally in the 80s when she was, at her sort of peak.
Yeah, it's our generation.
Yeah. So I'm showing my age here. So I used to put that on, and I just went in diving into that world. So obviously bands like the Beatles are top of my list for you know, influences and bands that I love the most. But I got a pretty good education just listening to classical and other stuff as well,
Okay.
jazz and blues. So yeah, as a kid, probably about 2 or 3, I can remember that far back just listening to these albums. And yeah.
And when was it when you grabbed your first instrument? When was it that you thought, all right, this is what I like,
Yeah.
this is what I'm going to give a crack on?
Well, do kitchen pots and pans count? 'Cause, that's
I love it.
so yeah, that's essentially what happened. I just started bashing away on whatever I could grab around the household, and then I think my parents were understandably sick of the racket. They just thought, let's just get him
buy
a
me
kit.
kit.
Yeah, but I was quite, you know, crafty about it. I'd sort of stretch plastic bags over buckets, and you get a sort of drum sound out of that. That was before I got the kit, obviously.
Well, that's creative.
Yeah, it sounded like a tom-tom. So, and then I'd get the snare sound, I sort of stretch foil over other things, so you kind of foil's got that snare kind of rattle. So.
Yeah.
But the problem is, this is the really idiotic part, and this is why it was never going to work. I didn't have drumsticks, so I'd play with chopsticks. So the chopstick would go straight through.
Not wooden spoons?
No wooden spoons, yeah. I don't know why I didn't use wooden spoons.
Just flip them around the other side.
That would have made a lot more sense, but not a very smart thing. But so, yeah, my folks got me my first kit when I was probably, I think, 12 or 13. I think it was around that time. And then luckily we had a garage separate from the house, so I used to go home from school and just bash away.
That makes a difference.
It makes a lot of difference because they could barely hear it, and I would literally put on a record and just play along to it.
Yep.
So that was the first instrument I really,
And you taught yourself, like on the drums, you just went for it.
Yeah, my mum had a friend who was, she was a very cool friend. She was a drummer, and she tried to teach me the drumming music, the notes and everything.
Okay.
And I'd go around for half an hour, but I would lose interest. My mind would just wander. So I couldn't be.
La.
Yeah. I'd have a go at it, and then I wouldn't get very far. But I ended up just playing. The first band I played in was I kid you not, a Black Sabbath covers band.
Awesome.
Yeah, but I loved playing with them. They were a grade above me. They were actually really good musicians. Like I was probably about 14, and they were about 15, 16. And it was that moment where you just sort of jump behind the kit and you start playing with them, and then they sort of just look back and like, oh, this nerdy, scrawny kid can actually play. He's not too bad.
And you're going,
Yeah. So yeah, I'm not as annoying as I look. But I ended up, we ended up doing school reviews and playing at house parties and stuff.
Nice.
And yeah, it was a good kind of introduction into that sort of musical world. But here's the thing, we didn't actually have a singer. We were mostly instrumental. We'd sort of get the odd...
even better.
Yeah, but it was all just like, like War Pigs, all those sort of songs. It was like, 8 minutes, dun no vocals though.
That's a challenge.
It was hard, actually. Yeah, thinking back, I don't know how we did it. So it was a good, bit of baptism by fire, because you had to kind of imagine where the vocals would go. Yeah.
And there was no backing track of this or that, guiding you. It was just go for it.
No, it was just straight in. And thinking back, I was playing a few of those songs completely arse backwards. Sorry, and was I had no idea, because I'd never heard the originals, so it was all just guesswork. But that kind of helps, I think, in a way. It kind of helps you to.
Of course.
It kind of hones your skills a bit when you're not quite sure what the original is.
Definitely, and you're thrown in the deep end, but you learn to swim.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I did that for a few years, and then I basically, would pick up the odd, when no one was looking, the odd acoustic guitar and sort of play it sort of feebly. But eventually, my mum bought a piano, and that was was a real, I guess, turning point. Just sitting down, figuring out where the notes and the chords, are, and different voicings and stuff. And so I would play for hours and just kind of put my foot on the sustain pedal and just let the chords sort of ring out. Yeah, that was a turning point.
And that's where the arranging and composition started, right?
I like to think so. But
because it's actually easy on a piano to actually get some sounds and chords quite quickly.
Yeah,
rather than a guitar.
Oh yeah. There's things. Honestly, if someone says to me, "All right, play A flat 7 on the guitar," I can't do it. Not through lack of trying. I'm just not I'm just quite limited in terms of the chords that I can play.
Yeah.
And often I have to reach for the capo just to get.
Look, I use it too.
Yeah, it's just to get to the right thing. But
Yeah.
but with piano, yeah, it just feels a lot more limitless in terms of where you can go.
The piano is it's got a broad range, so you can actually do a chord and it's sounding like this, sounding like that. You don't have to know the chord.
Yeah,
You can just feel your way through and say, oh, yeah, this works, this doesn't work, and it doesn't sound really bad.
yeah.
Whereas on the guitar, it can sound really bad.
It can, yeah. I went through that phase for a few years.
But look, I mean, with that, you get to learn all these instruments, and it's a positive thing, because I find because I can play different instruments as well, and I can actually, I've got the sound in my head about how it will sound on this or instrument or that instrument. I'll put a bit of piano or keys or whatever, or a bit of percussion maybe here, and then you can sort of visualize the sound if you like. I know it's a strange, term, visualizing sound, but you can actually hear it before you actually play it.
Yeah.
If you know the instrument.
Yeah, well, that's a good point actually, because on the I think it's the Peter Jackson doco, the Get Back, the recent one, the recent Beatles doco, the Fly on the Wall doco, there's a moment where Paul's explaining, how he writes songs on piano to, I think, one of the assistants there, and he's just saying, it's easy for him to write it on. It's always easy for Paul McCartney, of course, no one else. But it's easy for him to write these songs on piano because he can hear the whole thing in his head.
Yeah.
The whole piano, the piano contains an orchestra, is what he's saying.
Correct.
Essentially.
Yeah.
So yeah, completely agree. So yeah, that was great. But then we had to sell the piano because a rat got in it and urinated all over.
Oh,
it.
really?
Yeah. So that was the end. So that was the end of that.
That's awesome. That's a good story. That's a really good story, and that's probably maybe something we should write about in lyric or something.
I should turn it into a song, make it into a positive, because I love that piano and I still think about that piano every day. It's, not the rat. This isn't some Michael Jackson Ben story. This is no love song to a rat.
No. Well, not a lot of people will get that, but maybe our generation.
That's a deep cut for our generation.
Yeah, it is. It is. Oh, that's great. That's great. But look, it's onwards and forwards and onwards, as they say. And then you left Brisbane, you came here. When you came here, what was the hardest thing musically that you found? Because when I ask this question to a lot of musicians who have come from Sydney, Brisbane, Perth, or whatever, they've all got a different answer. Some of them say, "Oh, it's hard to get into the scene. It's hard to find, people to give us a shot. It's hard to find musicians."
Yeah.
What about for yourself? What was the hardest thing when you came to Melbourne?
Oh, it's a tough one. There were quite a few challenges, but I think the top of the list would be trying to, I guess, hold on to a lineup, because I've been lucky because most of my former bandmates or musicians that I've played with, the vast majority I've been able to maintain friendships with, and that's
a good thing.
Yeah, and that's
a good thing.
Yeah, and I think it's because the terms are always fairly clear. Like, I like to call it a benevolent dictatorship. There's no doubt. There's no doubt who's writing the songs here, folks. But that doesn't mean that people can't contribute. It's just that it's a solo project.
Yeah, and if I let them, they will.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's not. I don't want to say that it's an autocracy. It's just that it's still very much a solo project with band members involved. So for me, the hardest thing was finding, I guess, once I'd found musicians, priorities would change for them, not because they didn't enjoy playing in the band. It's just that, it's totally expected. You get older. Like when I moved to Melbourne, I was giving it away here, folks, but I was in my mid-20s, and that's a bit more of a, I guess, it's a young adult time when everyone else is still finding their feet. But as you kind of get a bit older, and as people get in their late 20s and early 30s, they might be settling down or having families of their own, and so or they might be getting that dream job, and so priorities change. So they might not be able to invest as much time.
So true.
Yeah,
So true.
So I think that was the hardest part. It was holding on to lineups, and because there'd be so much change, it would affect really the regularity of gigs and how often we gigged. Yeah.
Yeah, and the regularity of rehearsals.
Oh, big time. Yeah.
You know, I mean, you got your charts or you got whatever. You know, you got this and you got the material, but different people play different styles in different ways, and then you gotta gel. Got to get used to it. They got to get used to you. It's a process, and I don't think the people who are outside of the music industry and who are not musicians probably don't see that. They don't see all the effort and the time that us musicians put in to just rehearsing. And as you said, if the lineups change, it's sort of like throws a spanner in the works.
Yeah.
And you got to compensate for it somehow.
Yeah,
you know?
It's not like, I read about Chuck Berry whenever he toured around the world because he was a notoriously stingy person.
Yeah, I heard too.
For a wealthy, successful musician, sorry. But he was, I think that's because he was done over by the industry. So he had his reasons. But and it is a very tough industry, and even more so back then. But to save on costs, he would basically hire a backing band no matter where he was touring. So, fly to England, get a backing band there, go to, I don't know, could be Hawaii, same thing. So in my case, it's not like I can just hire a backing band and there it is. And that's the case for probably just about any sort of unsigned indie artist, I suppose. So, yeah.
But your band's an indie rock band. Chuck Berry, it's 3 chords.
Yeah.
All of his songs.
Yeah, that's
so
right.
you can whistle it to any musician and they'll get it.
Yeah.
And they'll probably get it on the fly.
That might have been why he kept changing the keys on them all the time, just to mess with them.
Just to mess with
So you think this is easy?
yeah, do it in F sharp.
Yeah, that's right. I read that he did that with Bruce Springsteen's backing band once.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they were like, oh, wow, I get to play with Chuck Berry, and then he just kept changing the key all the time, and sometimes even the song, like mid-song, just to mess with them. And they were like, oh God, we sound terrible. And then then after the stage, he just walked off and was like, goodbye, and just left in his limo or whatever. Oh, that's brilliant.
Checks in the mail?
Yeah,
that's it.
That's very rock and roll.
Oh, very, 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 very.
So I couldn't get away with that.
No. All right, I guess one last thing, Simon. If you had a musical magical wand to wave around, what would be the one thing that you think magic happens and all sorted? What would be what would be the outcome?
I suppose that's a really good question.
It's a hard one, but
I have to give this one some thought. Here's my brain.
there's a lot of
over.
options. I know.
Yeah.
But one thing that you think, if I was to wave now, in this, in the climate that we are now, in the position that we're in, or in the phase that you're in,
if
I was to wave a magical wand, this would happen. What would be it?
Look, I think for us, as an outfit or a band, I think for us it's always been, we always get people that might come up to us after shows and they really dig it, or they enjoy it and they want to, see our next gig and so forth. But for us, what's been a little bit elusive is, and I'm not saying, this is the be-all and end-all, but for us, what's always been elusive is getting that big song just to break through. Because I think we've got a few really strong songs that, particularly on the new album, that I think will find or should find an audience. So I think for me, it's just having that one song that can reach enough people. And that's not so much because, I feel like we deserve the success. It's just that I feel that the music is accessible enough to reach a larger audience. So that is the musical goal.
Okay.
Because I think musically we've done everything right, but I think we just need to. We'd all like to connect with with bigger audiences, and this year the gigs have been the best we've done.
Okay, well that's good. That's positive.
That's a positive, and I think to add to that, we want to take it outside Melbourne.
Of course,
regional Victoria as well. We want to go beyond regional Victoria and do the Sydney thing. So I guess Sydney, Brisbane, and Perth even. So I guess in answer to your question, bigger audience, bigger shows. Really, that's pretty simple. But
Awesome.
Yeah.
if people want to connect to you and they want to connect to your music, where do they do it?
Well, it's an easy one to remember. So it's amancalledsun.com. It's S-O-N, not S-U-N. And the Instagram is the same. It's just at A Man Called Sun.
And I'll pop the links into everything in the actual text of, the podcast and everything else on how we all do it, sort of thing. So,
free publicity.
Yeah. Simon, thank you very much. It's been an absolute pleasure. Hopefully we can do it again later on when you guys have done all your tours and everything like that. Just like to shout out and a big thank you to Yesteryear Revival, to my production team here, to Cake Eclipse as well for these beautiful cakes. And also, again to Simon, thank you very much. And hopefully, we'll do it again sometime, and we'll take it from there.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been great.
It's been a pleasure. All the very best.
Thank you. Cheers.
Cheers.
There's a faded postcard in this box of memories of you, dancing in a rainy city, oblivious to the gloom. Thought you'd be mine, then I realized what we had is all we had, and that's all that I need to know. I lie awake at night, wondering how things could have gone. There's a group of volcanic islands, time bombs in the sea, 1,000 miles from the mainland, scattered so carelessly, trying to survive every storm and tide. What we had is all we had, and that's all that I need to know. All these plans and shifting sands won't take me where I want to go. Down to Terminal 3, flying back to your home country. But listen, like the movies, there's just regret. There's a spot high up on the hill, far from the city streets. Could I remember you this way before I get the taste of defeat?
Nice one.
Hope you enjoyed the Strike a Chord podcast. Be sure to visit valentinoflamenco.com to access more podcast episodes, news, and other projects that I'm currently working on. Thanks for listening and watching.